Welcome to Twin Talks. I'm Nadia.
And I'm Nikki. Today we have Liz from Be Well Solutions to cook with us.
Hi everybody, my name is Liz. I'm a plant-based chef and my name of my company is Be Well Solutions. You can find me here. So today we're going to be making a Thanksgiving meal. We're going to be starting off with roast vegetables with a side of greens. You can find the list of ingredients of everything that we're making today in the description below.
So which one are we going to make first?
So we're going to do the roasted vegetables, which is really easy, and we have some beautiful heirloom carrots, nice and colorful, and we have some lovely different color beets that we're going to just roast up in the oven really quickly with a little bit of onion and some olive oil. So really simple. We just clean them off, cut them up, and throw them in the oven. So we're going to start off with the oven at 450 degrees, and we have a roast pan here, and we'll just cut them up. And it's all about the colors for this time of year. So I thought some red onion would be nice to add in the color scheme. And red onion also gives a really nice flavor.
It also looks so nice when everything's finished.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna cut it up into quarters, or quarter of quarters.
Want me to spread it on the pan for you?
Sure. And I'm going to take the carrots, and I'm just gonna, they've all been washed, everything's been washed, and I'm just gonna cut down the middle of the carrot. Look at that beautiful color. We could even cut it into smaller pieces, and then those go in there.
I'm really good at helping.
And with these small carrots, we really don't need to take the top and tail off. When they're on the plate, the person eating it can cut through that. But they're nice and tender, and they're clean. Really simple. And for these guys, I'm gonna do the same thing and just sort of cut them in half. We can leave the tops on because I find that's a really nice presentation. Now with the beets, they're gonna change the color, the red beets, pretty easily. So we'll sort of try and keep them a little separate. Now these guys, they've been washed as well, but they have a little bit of the stringiness on them. So I'm just gonna give them a quick peel.
Okay.
And again, I'm gonna leave the ends on them just for aesthetics. It's just all about the colors. This has like a pink
Oh, it's nice.
color, really
Beautiful.
pretty.
You can see it's healthy all around. It's beautiful fall colors.
And so that's all we have. And so all we're gonna do with the veggies is I have some extra virgin olive oil. So I'm just gonna drizzle that. Probably about a tablespoon is all you need. You don't need a lot. Once it warms up, it's gonna spread out. And then we're gonna just use a pinch of mineral salt. So I don't use any table salt. We want to use a mineral salt. This is a Himalayan pink salt, but you could use a sea salt or a Celtic salt, or another salt that's really useful, that's really mineral rich is called real salt. And it's full of minerals that our body needs. Now, because all of this food is whole from the earth, whole food, it's not processed, so it doesn't have a lot of salt, or it doesn't have any salt in it. So we want to add some salt just for, to bring the flavors out. And that's what that's going to do. And then a little bit of cracked black pepper. And then we're going to put that into a preheated 450 degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes. Okay, and so our next recipe, we're going to make the apple cobbler, which is a really fun recipe, and it's a non-grain, so we're going to use nuts instead of your typical wheat flour or oats and things like that. We're also going to incorporate a little bit of the lower glycemic sweeteners, so we're using here coconut sugar. So we have all of our ingredients measured out, so we have some coconut sugar here, and we have some dates as well. These are medjool dates, and they're really fantastic to use in our recipes. And then we have some pecans and some walnuts. And in raw cooking, which is what I was trained in, the nuts and seeds, when we use them, we actually activate them. So we prepare them in advance. So how I've done this is, and it sort of brings out the nutrient qualities in the nuts. And so what happens with the nuts is I soak them. So I buy them raw. They're not cooked, they're not roasted, there's no salt, anything on them, they're just raw. And then I soak them overnight or for 8 hours. And then I rinse them off. And what happens with the nuts is that they have these enzyme inhibitors on them. And that is acidic for us to ingest. So for walnuts particularly, if you've ever eaten a walnut and you get that sort of coating on your mouth, starts to hurt after you eat them, that's the acidic coating. So they're designed to grow into trees or plants. So that they can produce more nuts. But when they fall off the trees, they have this sort of protective coating on them called an enzyme inhibitor. That's what we want to remove by soaking them. So when you soak them, we remove this enzyme inhibitor, which is an acid-forming phytic acid, actually. The water actually comes brown. And so if you were to soak them and then look at the water afterwards, it's kind of a yucky color. I don't throw that out though. I use that to water my plants because plants love that acid environment. So there's some, some benefits to doing it. And then after they're soaked and rinsed, so we get rid of all of that brown water, they rinse them clear, and then I dehydrate them. And that is what we call activating them. So that brings out the nutrient value of them. And so when we eat them, then we get that extra nutrients from them. So they're nice and light and crispy for 6 to 8 hours or overnight. And that's for your dark nuts. So pecans, walnuts, almonds, those darker, more heavier, sturdier nuts. And that's when you're actually going to see them start to sprout. And so it could be activated or sprouted. And seeds are the same. So sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, if you soak them, get rid of that enzyme inhibitor, then they start to actually grow little tails. Like you'll see it on sunflower seeds because they're much smaller. And so they start to actually grow. And that's how they would grow into a tree or a plant. So these have been activated. They have been soaked and dehydrated. And they're ready to go. We also got some lovely apples because it's apple season. So I thought that was fitting for our dessert today. And I've already started by cutting up the apples, slicing them nice and thin. With my mandolin here. So I thought I would just show you quickly how to get that through. And you can use a mandolin like this if you have one. If you don't have one, you just slice up your apples normally and just cut them into small slices. Or you could dice them up if you wanted to as well. But I have this great little tool here to core the apples. This is a star frit. And so all you do...
I love that. Okay, what do you do?
So all you do is you put your corer over top of the core of the apple. So the stem, get the stem right in the middle of that hole. And then with your palms of your hands, you just sort of push down and it cuts it. And this is going to be the one that's not going to work. I saved the biggest one because it looks so nice.
I hope you don't break it.
There we go.
Wow.
All right.
That's muscle.
And so you just push them through.
Sure saves time.
Sure does.
Forever.
And for this recipe, I just say leave the skin on. You get lots of the nutrients in the skin. So there's no need to peel the apples. And like I said, you can do it through the mandolin. And I'm going to place my apple slices, as many as I can fit.
Oh my goodness.
Yep, and then I just
Easy.
run it through really quickly.
That's perfect. Nice
And nice, yeah. We're gonna now start with some of our ingredients in the food processor. So starting with the food processor, I'm just gonna use like a couple of handfuls, maybe. We're gonna use a portion of the apples, so about not even a quarter, maybe a quarter of the apples that we have prepared here. And then we're going to add our dates, 6 to 8 dates, depending on how sweet you like your desserts. I tend to go on the not so sweet part. So let's start with 6. They're not going to go in right away though. They're pitted. So they have pits, I'm sorry. So we want to make sure that we remove the pits from the dates. And they're nice and soft, so you could just like pull them open. And sometimes they have like a little flower on the end too, so you want to make sure you get that off. So we need a zest of a lemon. So I brought just a little grater. This is just a simple way to do it. The recipe calls for half a teaspoon of the zest of a lemon. So that's probably going to be close to half of the lemon.
Okay.
So I'll just zest that in there.
Smells so nice.
So a little bit of pressure on the lemon. You don't want to go too far to get the brine in there. You don't want the brine, just the outside. And then from there, we're going to use the juice of the lemon. So we need 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. So we're probably only going to need about half of this lemon, and I'm just going to zest it or juice it right into there.
Yeah, I love
So about 2 teaspoons. We're just eyeballing it at this point. But that's okay.
Sometimes
You
the
can't
best
go
cooking
wrong
is
with
eyeballing.
And so we're going to use a tablespoon of cinnamon. That's perfect. So then we're going to process that up. We're going to make it into a paste. So we're going to make the paste, and then we're going to run the paste through, or mix the paste through the apples, and that's going to be our filling. Oh. You want to start with it off. So I'm going to start with it on just and pulse it through. So we want to break up those dates because they're big chunks, and we're going to break up the apples as well. And then every once in a while, you probably need to open it up and just give it a stir. Smelling amazing.
Smells great.
Okay, so that's a nice paste. And you can make it as fine or as pasty as you like, but it's all going to cook down once it goes into the oven. So do you want to mix that into the apples?
Of course, that'd be great.
The veggies are almost done.
That looks utterly delicious. Wow. I'm not going to waste a single bit of it. I'm just going to mix it in. That's what you want,
Yeah.
Liz? Okay. That's what I'll do.
You can use your hands if you want, whatever's easiest. And so the next part, we're going to make the crumble part.
Okay.
So we're going to use the nuts that we talked about. Okay. So we need 2.5 cups of pecans or walnuts. Okay. Here I have a combination of the two, so you can throw the nuts. Those are walnuts, and then the pecans can go in.
That's awesome. There's the walnuts, and I'll get the pecan.
Pecans are absolutely amazing. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to butter them a little bit. So if you've ever had nut butter,
Yes.
Yeah.
this is how you make nut butter. Okay. It's the simplest thing in the world. So you start with, and it helps that they're activated, so they're dried, soaked and dried. And so we're just going to blend it up a little bit so that we get a little bit of a buttery consistency before we add the rest.
Okay.
And you'll see as it starts to create the butter, you're going to see it start to stick to the sides. We're not quite there yet, but it won't be done. So you can start to see it's coming together. So if we were just to let it continue, it would turn into a nice creamy butter. But I think we're good the way it is. We just want that little bit of, bring out the oils. And then we're going to add the rest of the nuts. And then we have 2 teaspoons of cinnamon that are going to go in, and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And then we're using a 1/4 cup of coconut sugar in this instance. Now you can use coconut sugar or other sweeteners of your choice, but coconut sugar is a natural sugar. And then we're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we have mineral salt. Yeah.
There it is.
And again, we're using mineral salt as opposed to iodized table salt because we want the minerals our bodies need, those minerals. And then we're just going to pulse it up and make it into that crumble. So this one I wouldn't do on high. I'm just going to pulse it just until it's like a coarse, crumbly texture. I think that's looking pretty good. Yeah, that's looking pretty good.
I think so.
And so we have a nice coarse, crumbly texture. Yum. Smell that.
Oh, it smells great. Nice.
We need smell-o-vision. And so what we're going to do, we're going to use this pan. So we're going to use probably about half of the mixture, and we're going to just put it on the bottom of the pan.
Yeah.
So a base.
Yeah. So you just
So if you want to just,
down a little bit so you have a little layer, right?
yeah, you want to just as even as possible. So then the apples go in the center, and you just pile it on. Now you could use a bit of a bigger pan as well, and then you would spread them out.
Should just spread it out a bit. That's it.
And then you're gonna spread the remainder of the crumble on top, and then that's gonna go in the oven at 350.
Excuse me, upper and lower oven. Excuse me, little miss thing over there.
And you can press it down too, because it'll help cook.
And how long do we make it cook for?
About 20 to 30 minutes, depending on your temperature of your oven, until it starts to sort of bubble. All right, so our next recipe, we're going to make some pumpkin biscuits. Now these biscuits are really great. Again, they're grain-free and they're gluten-free, and the low glycemic sugar. So we're going to use the coconut sugar again, and just a little amount. And you could actually make them sort of as a sweet biscuit, or you can make them as a savory biscuit. So in this instance,
Which one do you like better?
I tend not to go for the sweeter side of things. I tend to follow more of a keto style diet, which is no sugar at all.
Okay.
But in this one, we're going to add a little bit of sugar, because I just find that for the general public, they tend to like things with a little bit of sweetness. But I mean, if you're going to make this recipe, I would encourage people to try it both ways. And you could put a little bit of spices in there, or add the sugar, or put both and try it out. Okay, so we're on to our pumpkin biscuits. So we're going to start off, and this one's really easy. All you need is a bowl and a whisk, and our ingredients that are already measured out. So we're going to start off with a cup of almond flour. If you want to put that in there. And again, this is a grain-free and gluten-free recipe. We have 1/3 of a cup of coconut flour. Coconut flour, you don't want to use a lot of coconut flour because it's very dry. It's got a lot of fiber in it, so we just use it as an addition to the almond flour. We're going to add 3 teaspoons of baking powder.
Okay, here's our baking
So what we're going to do here is we're just going to add in the dry powders, and then we're going to mix it up with the whisk, and then we're going to add our wetter ingredients after. 1/2 teaspoon of mineral salt. And we're going to use 1/4 cup of coconut sugar. This is only probably about 2 tablespoons. You could use, of coconut sugar. You could use a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on your desired sweetness that you want. And then if you want to just mix that up with the whisk.
Perfect.
And get it all blended up. And then we're going to incorporate some of our wet ingredients before we start. So for the wet ingredients, you can use, in the recipe, it calls for 1/2 cup of milk or 1/2 cup of water. Now I make all of my own milks, and this particular milk I have pre-made is a hemp milk made with hemp seeds and water. So in your blender, you would just add 1/4 cup of hemp seeds that you can buy at your local store, and 2 cups of water, and blend it up, and you have hemp milk. And it's full of antioxidants. It's a full protein, so really good for a vegan diet. And it's got all of your omega-3s. So it is a really good alternative milk to try.
Amazing.
So what we're going to do is we're going to measure out 1/2 cup of the milk in our mixing cup here, 1/2 cup. And then I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of ground chia seeds. And the chia seeds act as our binder. But what we're going to do by adding it to the liquid, this could be water as well, it doesn't have to be milk, but I like to add the hemp because it's got the extra protein. So you're going to add in your chia seeds, and then you're going to mix it together. And what happens, this is going to act as our chia egg.
Wow.
So it's the alternative to the traditional egg. So you just mix it together. You could use a fork or a spoon, and it will actually thicken up. So you want to just mix it as well as you can, and then leave it for a few minutes. So you can see it's got that gelatinous texture, and that's what we want. So the longer you let it sit, the more gelatinous it's going to become. And there's also 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin spice, which is just a pumpkin blend. So it's got some cinnamon, some nutmeg. We're going to put it right in here. Cinnamon, nutmeg, allspice, and some cloves. And that's just going to give us a little bit more of that pumpkin feel.
What's this?
2 tablespoons of coconut oil. It's not quite melted all the way through, which is fine. It'll come together as we mix it together. So we can just add that in.
Add that in.
Scrape it in.
Yeah.
And add your chia seeds.
Okay. Oh, it's just like an egg. And it's perfect. Mix it all
Yeah,
in.
and mix it in. And then we have 1/3 of a cup of pumpkin puree.
There we go.
And if you needed to, you could just add a little bit of water or get in there with your hands and yeah, don't be afraid to like really mix it together. And because some of that coconut oil wasn't really melted, it'll melt with your hands.
Look at the consistency. It's really quite good. Probably needs a little bit mixing more, but it's really like a dough. It's quite.
Yeah, and that's
quite
what
nice.
you want. You want it like a biscuit batter. And so there's also an option. We use turmeric a lot. It's got a lot of antioxidant properties and good for inflammation and stuff, but it's also great as a natural food color. And so if you wanted to add it, I didn't bring any today, but if you wanted to add a little turmeric, you could make it more of a yellowish, pumpkin-y.
That would obviously be a little bit more on the savory side when you're making it savory.
It doesn't give a taste at all, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I have a nice little ice cream scoop,
Okay.
and I just find it's really easy to make some really nice,
Well sized.
nice even proportion baby one. You make them.
And how long do these go into the oven?
So these will go in the oven at 350 again for about 30 minutes, just until they're kind of
Smells delicious.
golden on top. So our next recipe, which is the finale for our Thanksgiving feast, we're going to be making some pumpkin Alfredo sauce with some fettuccine type noodles. So in this instance, we're going to be using some vermicelli, so some rice noodles. So I just bought the dry noodles, and all we need to do is pop them in some boiling water, or you could even boil your water with the kettle and just pour them on top, and they take about 5 minutes to soften up, and that's all we need to do. And then we're going to incorporate those at the end.
Okay.
And the rest of our ingredients we're going to use the blender for this one. So you could use any type of blender. I have a Vitamix here, which is a high-speed blender, but if you have, just a household blender, that's fine. You could even use the Magic Bullet or equivalent to that in whatever you make your smoothies with, and that should blend up just fine as well. So what I'm going to do, we have some water boiling, so I'm just going to pop the noodles into if you want to do that, you can pop the noodles into the boiling water. For the base of our sauce, I'm going to start with some onion. So I have some nice sweet onion here chopped up, just sliced up into some nice fine slices. I have about a teaspoon of olive oil in the skillet, and I'm just going to warm up the skillet and add the onions. So we'll just warm that up, add our onions in there, and a little bit of mineral salt to get them going. We just want to get the onions translucent. And then we're going to go on to our ingredients for the sauce. So in this instance, we're making an Alfredo sauce, but we're not using the traditional creams and dairy. We're going to be using cashews to make our sauce. These have been soaking, and what happens when you soak them, they kind of puff up and add the moisture back into them. They also soften up, so it's easier to blend. Right. But cashews have traditionally, when they're stored, they can hold toxins, mold, and mycotoxins.
Okay.
So it's really important to soak them. And when I soak them, I add a little bit of apple cider vinegar and let them sit. And that apple cider vinegar it creates a little bit of the acid, and it sort of cleans them off. So these have been soaking for a few hours. So you can soak them. If you're in a hurry and you forgot to soak them, you could put hot water in, a little bit of apple cider vinegar, soak them for 20 minutes, and then rinse them off really well, and they should be good to go. But if you have longer time, 4 to 6 hours, soak them with the apple cider vinegar and then rinse them off really well. Now I soak all my nuts and seeds in mason jars, and I find that works really well. You can see it, it's in glass, not plastic. So what I have this mesh screen, and what this comes from actually is when you buy your garlic or your ginger in the little packages, the organic garlic and ginger. Yeah. And then I just cut it out so it fits on top of the mason jar, and I take my lid without the centerpiece, and then I'm just going to rinse this out really quickly. So you just want to rinse it really well to get rid of any residue that's left in there. And then we're going to use a cup of cashews. On my jug for my blender, there's actually measurements. So I can and the great thing about these recipes, which I forgot to mention for any of the former recipes is that it doesn't have to be exact. It's not
Okay.
like baking. When you're baking and you have to have everything exact, the
God.
chemical structure of everything.
Yeah.
So you can add a little bit more, a little bit less. You can sort of play around with the measurements. So I have a bit extra, a bit more than a cup of. I don't think we're going to use it all because it's going to be too thick.
Okay.
But you could add all of the cashews if you wanted. So we have a cup of cashews, soaked cashews. Then we're going to add half a cup of water because we need some moisture in there, some liquid to blend. And then we have all our spices set out here. So we're going to have you add some of those spices. So the next thing we're going to use is about a teaspoon of olive oil. So I'll just
You do that.
Yeah, we can just for a little bit of oil, half a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of coriander, half a teaspoon of white pepper, 2 teaspoons of mineral salt,
There it is.
half a teaspoon of sage, teaspoon of garlic powder,
That's that one.
a little dash of nutmeg.
No.
Excellent.
Sound effects.
For the cheesy type of flavor, we have the nutritional yeast. So nutritional yeast is a product that's used a lot in the vegan community and vegetarian, and it's going to add that cheesy flavor. It's also got great vitamins and nutrients in it, and it's rich in vitamin B, so it's really great flavor enhancer. And then we have our pumpkin. So this is a pureed pumpkin mixture. And then we're going to pop that onto the blender. And I'm going to always make sure that all my buttons are on low and off, because if you turn on your blender and it is on the highest level, it's going to
Happened to me.
make everybody jump out of their shoes. So I'm just going to start off slowly and start to blend those nuts
Yes.
and increase the
Look at that
speed.
consistency. It's beautiful.
So we'll have a look, and you want to blend this long enough because of the cashews in there. You want to blend it long enough that you don't have a gritty texture. You want to make sure that it's nice and smooth. We should taste test
Yeah.
as you go, just to make sure that the flavor's right. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to add that into the onions and warm it up, and that's all that there is to it.
Sorry.
So this is a traditional, this recipe is actually a raw food recipe.
Okay.
And in raw food, normally you wouldn't heat anything up. So I've just incorporated the onions and heating it in the skillet. So then I'm going to pop the noodles in there.
Ooh, wow. Whoops. Well, that was easy.
The biscuits just finished as well.
Excellent. So everything's ready at the
Timing
same
is
time.
perfect.
Great, so now we have everything prepared and we're ready to plate. So I've started off with some nice local greens. So it's a mixture of mustard greens, we have some spinach in there, we have some arugula, just a combination of everything. And then I've put our nice roasted veggies on there, a nice presentation.
It looks beautiful.
With the nice beautiful colors, a little bit of that shine coming through. And try and grab a bunch.
Just like Alfredo, just as you said.
And you can sort of twist it as you plate it. And then we have our little pumpkin biscuits.
Oh, they turned out perfectly.
Turned out really nice. So they're nice and just golden on the top. So we can put
Couldn't be better.
one or two on there.
There we go.
They smell good. Yeah, dig in.
Want to try? Well, I'm going to try what you guys aren't. So I'm going to try this first. That pumpkin really comes through. That's delicious.
This Alfredo's excellent.
It tastes just like it, though. It's amazing.
Isn't it great? It's nice and creamy and so good. It smells so good. That's the conclusion to our cooking workshop today. I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was so much fun. Thank you for having me. If you would like to follow and find out more about me and what I do, more recipes, you can find me here or you can find me down here. Have a happy Thanksgiving and stay safe, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed our special cooking show for Thanksgiving. Liz, thank you so much for coming on Twin Talks. And we hope that all of you out there have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
See you next time on Twin Talks. Booyah.